directions are specifically for computer users. iPad and smartphones will work a little bit differently, and I'll give you a brief idea of that. But for computer, because most people show up on a computer, you're going to want to move your mouse around on your screen. When you do that, a menu will activate at the bottom. On that menu to the left, you should see a microphone and a video camera. And if they have red lines through them, then they are muted or turned off. If they do not have red lines through them, then they are not muted or turned on. For example, your video camera. When I click mine, which now has a red line through it, it will turn my video camera off and you will see my image of a beautiful tree. And when I click it again, you'll see my image of my beautiful face. So that's one thing that you'll want to know as a participant. Two other things that you'll want to know are on that bottom menu, participants and chat. If you click both of those options, they will open boxes probably to the right-hand side of your screen. The participant list will have everyone's names listed, and at the bottom of that list, you'll see two options. One says unmute me and one says raise hand. So everybody go ahead and try to raise your hand now using the electronic option. Okay, it puts a little blue hand next to your name in the participant list, and that's really handy for people who are hosting a meeting. And it puts them up in the order that the hands were raised. So I can tell that Zoe was the quickest on the raise hand option. You were the first person to raise your hand, and then Lisa was next. So if I'm going to go in order of raised hands, I can follow that list on the participant list. If you've changed your mind and you no longer have anything to say and you'd like to lower your hand, you can simply click it again and that will put your hand down. So now everybody put your hands down. And as a host, you do have an option for lowering all hands. And I will show you the host controls as well. Let me move into a screen share real quick. Okay, when I share my screen, you're going to see all of my host controls, and that's because I have my settings in my host account set to share these controls with you. It is not a default setting, and usually you're not going to want to have your system set that way because you really don't want people to see your Zoom screen and your private chats and things like that. So this is just for training purposes that I have it set this way. And another thing to note is I have a second computer running so that I can see what you're seeing. That supports me as a host because my screen looks different than yours. So my second computer is signed in as a participant and I can look over at it. So when you see me looking over sideways, it's because I'm double checking to make sure that when I shared my screen, it's actually sharing what I want it to share, that I don't have my email up or, you know, pictures of my children in a slideshow going. So over here to the right at the bottom of the participant list, you'll see invite. Well, let me back up for a second because some of you probably haven't updated your Zoom. So your screen might look a little different even if you were in the host mode. You probably wouldn't see invite yet until you do your update. The most recent update came out last night and it's pretty huge. It changes the appearance of many things. So you'll get to see it firsthand here today because I updated because it didn't give me a choice. I wasn't going to update because I wanted to, you know, just go with what I knew, but now we're going to learn a little bit together. So this invite option used to be on the bottom menu. Now it's up here in the participant list. And this is where you can invite people to your meeting if you need to. You can quickly copy the URL. You can copy the invitation. You can see the meeting password. It's all listed right there. I don't use that very often, ever, but it is there. It may be useful to somebody. Here's the mute everybody button, the unmute everybody, and then the more. This is where I can click. If this is checked, then people can unmute themselves. If it is unchecked, then you cannot unmute yourself. You'd have to raise your hand or type in the chat and let us know that you wanted to speak, and then we can unmute you. I do that typically in meetings and courses just to protect the sound quality as we're working together, because it's really hard if 2 or 3 people or 5 or 6 people or 10 or 20 people are trying to talk at the same time, then we really can't hear each other. And the recording is also a piece. If we're going to use a recording as a training tool, or even if it's a private workshop and we just want our participants to be able to go back and review a recording, it's nice to be able to hear and understand. So that mute option is helpful. Other pieces in here that will be useful to you, this play, enter, and exit chime. I don't use that because I find it distracting. If every time somebody comes or leaves, there's a little chime that goes off, that's distracting to me. So I choose not to use it. There are people who do enjoy using it, and to my best knowledge, only the host and co-host can hear that chime. Allow participants to rename themselves. This is a security feature that was added. In the past, you could just rename yourself. So they've made it optional now so that people can't try to, show up with a different name. Lock meeting allows you to lock the meeting at any given point, and no one else could enter even if they have the password and meeting link. And enable waiting room. You all went through a waiting room before you came in today. Again, that is a security feature. It was recently enacted on all free and single user pro accounts, that the waiting room was now the default setting, so that people have to go through that waiting room and then you approve their entry to your meeting. On accounts that have more than one pro account, like ESD Global or the company that I work for, MVC Academy, we have many pro accounts listed in our account. These new security changes were not enforced, and those users are able to choose what they'd like to do. I'm going to stop for a second and see. That was a lot of information, all in one fell swoop, and that's all about hosting. Okay, so I'm curious if there's any questions at this point. And again, we can practice our participant role by using the electronic raise hand or typing things into the chat. Okay, and Zoe, I see your question about kicking out trolls. We will go through that. That's part of the security features, and it is a subtopic, and it will be covered there. Thanks for asking. Any other questions, particularly related to how I started this meeting, the information that I was sharing? Okay, Wendy, let me unmute your line. Go ahead,
somebody rang my doorbell who needed to get let into the building, so I didn't get what you said before the red lines muting and stuff.
So Wendy, there's going to be a recording of this, and in all honesty, I don't really remember what I said before the red line.
Okay.
So I'm
right.
gonna.
It's just because I'm a little bit nervous because tomorrow I have to actually do a meeting, but it's okay. Right. I'll be fine.
I can send you my notes, Wendy, that that have how I open a meeting, and that might be helpful to you.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Send me, if you don't mind, Wendy, put in the chat, Robin, please send me your notes about how to open the meeting so that I don't forget. Okay, so now as the host, I think I still have my screen share going. I will lower Wendy's hand and I will remute. Now here's a tip. Don't ever lower the hand until you have remuted somebody, especially if you have like 100 people in your room, because now I have to actually go find Wendy and then remute. But if I had remuted her first and then lowered her hand, it would have been easier. So that's a tip for folks to know. Lisa, I'm going to open your line. Go ahead.
You may be getting to this later, but I have a question about sharing my screen and versus, how I'm going to show them videos and stuff like that.
Yep. We will go through more screen share. And in fact, actually, I'm going to stop my screen share now. All right. So now I'm going to mute Lisa, and then I'll lower hand. Okay, so screen share is another subtopic, and we will go through that. Okay, are hosts limited if it's on those platforms? Tasha, let me unmute you because I'm not sure I understand your question. Go ahead.
Oh, hello. Most of the time I am, out and about, and I have my phone or I have my iPad with me, but I don't usually carry my laptop everywhere. So as a host, do I still have all these features available and it's just a different way, or are some of these more limited with those platforms?
Yes. Most features are available and some of them more limited. And
Okay.
it goes computer, you're gonna have the most features and ease and accessibility. Laptop is second and phone is third. And they're constantly improving. So one of the features that was not on a phone was to be able to annotate. And I think it is there now, although annotating is very limited on a phone and challenging, especially if your screen is small. So hosting other things that you can't do on an iPad or an iPhone, you cannot do a local recording. You can still record to the cloud, but you can't do a local recording. So if that's important to you, then you'd want to be on a computer. But for just jumping on a meeting, I often jump on my phone, you know, host from my phone while I'm, you know, running late for something. And then I get home and pop onto my computer where I can have more ease and accessibility.
Got it.
So, all right, let's see, what else have we got here? Are these options only available for paid accounts, or are they options on the free accounts as well? So that's a great question. So Zoom has a free basic entry account, and then they have a paid account, the pro account, a single user pro account. And that's what most people are going to use, is either the free account or the single user account, pro account. And the free account has most of the features that a pro account will have, with some limitations. If you're only meeting with one other person, then you have no time limitation. So if Wendy and I want to meet on my free account, we could meet for hours and hours and hours. Actually, there is a 24-hour limit. But Wendy, I don't think we'd still like each other after 24 hours on Zoom together. So, but if we had Wendy and Beth, we would be limited to a 40-minute meeting. It will kick you off after 40 minutes if you have more than 2 people in your free account. So there are lots of workarounds. If you're just doing, you know, short little gatherings, that's fine. Or if you're doing a 2-hour workshop, you can let people know, I've chosen to do a free account because that supports my financial well-being. And at the end of 40 minutes, we're going to have to pop off and pop back on. And that's okay. I've had lots of people do that. A pro account you don't have to do that. You're unlimited in how much you can use that. A couple of other features in a pro account that you don't have in a free account are polling. You can make polls in a pro account, but not a free account. And you can have a co-host in a pro account. You cannot have a co-host in a free account. Co-host is actually very handy, especially in this day and age where people are showing up to our meetings that are uninvited or being disruptive. If you have a co-host, then they have the capacity to support the security features and remove somebody from a meeting. They also have the capacity to monitor raised hands, to raise and lower hands, to mute and unmute, to stop screen shares, to do any of those pieces. The only thing a co-host can't do, I say this, so anytime I say only, take it with a grain of salt because things change constantly in Zoom. So to my knowledge, the only thing in the moment that a co-host can't do is set up breakout rooms. And only the host can do that. Okay, so that's what we've got on pro account and basic account. Let me stop for a second. Any questions on that? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. There will be a recording. Yep. Can you post live on Facebook with a paid account? I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know. I've actually never done the posting live on Facebook thing. It's just not part of the work that I do. So you could probably find an answer to that on the Zoom US support site. Waiting rooms. Yep, we'll come right back to that. That'll be part of security. I will show the whiteboards and screen sharing. In fact, here, I'm going to screen share and I'm going to show you my nice little PowerPoint that I created. Okay, so this is screen sharing PowerPoint, and I'll go back and walk you through the steps that I did that. You can see already we've deviated from my agenda because the whole poll piece we just weren't ready for today. We will do that on part 2. Okay, so if the screen share is taking up your full computer window, and maybe your chat or the images are covering pieces of the screen share and you don't enjoy that, which you can see on mine, that is what is happening. These pictures are covering up part of my screen share, so you can't see the whole thing. You can use these buttons up here. You won't be able to do it right now by clicking on your screen because you're seeing my screen, but I can click this and it will hide the thumbnail. I can move it up out of the way. I can bring it back. I can make it smaller and bigger. Obviously, you're seeing all of that. And as a host, I wouldn't want you to see this piece of mine. The only reason you're seeing this is because my screen share settings are set up to show you my Zoom settings so that I can teach you how to use them. Okay. So, oops, end of slideshow. Yes, I know, it was only one slide. Okay. So again, in your account, if the screen share is taking up the full page and you'd like it to be smaller, you can press escape on your computer and it will take the screen share down to a smaller image and give you back your chat windows and your participant windows and your thumbnail images across the top. That's really handy for me as a host when I'm sharing my screen. I do that on my other computer so that I can still monitor the chat and see if there are hands risen, if people have raised their hands. So I'm going to stop my share. I think I saw a chat come in. You couldn't see the windows I was referring to. I saw them on my other computer. That was interesting. So I can go over that again. Yes. So screen share. I am going to, so I have screen shared my screen and right now you see my Zoom windows. Okay, you see the speaker view, you see the thumbnails up at the top. Okay, over to the right, you'll see my participant list. My mouse is moving up and down over top of it. Okay, and below, you'll see the chat. Right? A few people nod your heads. Cool. This is a way to actually to increase interactivity is to ask people to give you responses, even if it's just raise your, nod your head or click on the reaction buttons down on your Zoom screen. This is kind of fun. Everybody can go and give me some applause. So yeah, everybody go clap your hands. Well, you got to clap your electronic hands, Wendy, down with your reactions there. Okay. You have choices there. You've got thumbs up or clap hands. Those are nice ways just to get some feedback. And, you can get people to do that for, you can say something, a question like, everybody who ate breakfast today, give me a thumbs up. And then you're getting some interactivity and feedback, even though it's limited. You could also have people type things into the chat, or you could have people raise their electronic hands. Again, screen share, you're going to click this option for screen share. When you click that, this window will open up, okay, and you can choose what you're going to share. Okay, so for me, I'm sharing my Zoom windows. That's right here. If I wanted to share my PowerPoint, it's right here. If I wanted to share my Google Drive, it would be there. A whiteboard would be right here. There's a couple other options up here you want to know about. Advanced will allow you to share only a portion of your screen. So if you want to get really tricky and only share, just a teeny little bit of your screen, you can do that. Or music or computer sound. This is something that people run into when they want to show videos. They have to remember to click the share computer sound. And if you didn't want to actually show the video itself, but only have the sound, you'd use this option. Okay. If you don't click share computer sound and you go to YouTube and run a video, they're going to see the video, but they won't hear anything. I've done that in a meeting. It was like a 4-minute long video with no sound, and I didn't want to check my chat because I had shared my screen and I was scared people were going to see my chat. This was back in my early days. So I ignored the chat where everybody was saying, we can't hear anything, we can't hear anything. So at the end of 4 minutes, I found out we couldn't hear anything. I was like, oh, okay, well, let's do it again. You know, so those are good things to know. And files, if you had a particular file you wanted to share, you can go straight to Google Drive and pull it up. Okay, and back to basics. Again, I'm sharing my Zoom screen. Hey, Lisa, I see your hand is up. So you can actually see me doing this now. So I'm highlighting Lisa's name. I have the option to lower hand, unmute, or more. I could do a number of things here. I can chat with her. I can stop her video. I'm going to get your hand. I'm going to unmute you in just a second. Stop video is really handy if someone's internet connection is low. You can stop their video, which will give more bandwidth to their audio so that you can hear them, you know, hear their questions. Spotlight video, that's advanced. We'll come back to that another time. Make host, make co-host, allow record, rename, put in waiting room. So if somebody was being disruptive, you know, or I've had people show up at meetings, you know, not properly closed and forget that their camera is on. That would be, you know, and maybe it's somebody you know, or maybe they got up and went to the bathroom and didn't realize that their mic was open or their camera was on. You can quickly just pop them into a waiting room and, you know, then let them know what's going on. And if they were being disruptive, that's another thing that you could do if you wanted to have any kind of conversation or, you know, figure anything out. And remove, you could actually just remove them. Once you remove someone, they cannot come back into your meeting with the same IP. I think it's with the same IP address, but certainly not with the same email address. Okay, Lisa, now that I've talked way more, I'm unmuting your line and you can tell me what your question was.
So my, excuse me, my question is in the share box. Can you go to that?
Yes.
Option?
Back to the share box.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, when I go to share, I have those 4 top boxes, but how did you get those other 2 things in that?
So the PowerPoint and the Google Chrome?
Yes.
Because they are open on my computer. So anything I might want to share, it's a good idea to have it queued and ready so that you don't accidentally share other things. So if there were a particular YouTube video I wanted to play, I would go ahead and have it open on my desktop, and then you would see it right here as another option.
I see. Okay.
So, and that really is best practice, to be able to choose specifically what you want, rather than having people watch you scroll through many different screens and do different things. In fact, one of the settings that you can set in your host account is to not let your desktop ever be seen.
Ah.
So that wasn't there in the beginning. So many people saw lots of things on my desktop in the beginning of my career with running Zoom meetings, until I figured out this other piece. Okay, there is a question I got privately, which was, can 2 or more participants talk and be heard at the same time? So the microphones are pulled to whatever person is talking. So if we are literally talking at the same time, no, you wouldn't hear anything, but it's really unlikely that people are going to literally talk at the exact same time. Whoever's noise came up first is going to usurp the microphone. And then when they pause for a second, somebody else is going to grab the microphone. And then when they pause, somebody else will grab the microphone. So if you have many mics open, then it can get pretty hard to hear and understand what's going on. So in small meetings, asking people to be responsible for their own mics, you know, opening and closing their mics is fine. In larger meetings, having more control over that is helpful. So the question is from Joanne, do participants see the screenshot options? So do they see this screen that I'm showing right now? I think that's what you're asking me, Joanne. Can you give me a, let me open up your mic and you can let me know. Is that true for you, Joanne?
Yes.
Okay. So when you first open this screen, when you're sharing your screen, yes, they will see that. There's an option in your settings that can blur your desktop so that they can't see what's on your desktop. And presumably whatever else you have showing here are things that you would want to choose from. So, you know, hopefully that wouldn't be an issue for them to be able to see those things.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And have I missed anything in the chat? I've been trying to track that. And you're right, that was why you could not see my screen, was because it was in full share. All right, any other questions on screen share while we're here? And then I want to run through security real quick. I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay, so when we use the ESDG account, do we automatically use their settings? Well, that's a complicated question. So it depends on how they have their account set up. I think ESDG has 3 pro lines or 4, and depending on, you can have your lines all set independently, so they can have different settings. But the bottom line answer is yes, you will be using their settings, and each one of their lines could have different settings, although there is a way to make all of the lines match. So, and Clara is giving us a little more information. Clara, can I open your mic and you can share with us?
Sure. So with mentors will log in for their Zoom calls with their groups. Mentors will use a specific account and they'll have host privileges. So when your mentor, or when you as a mentor set up a call, you can activate even additional security features if you want to, although most of them are already activated, but you have control there.
Okay, and so Clara, are you meaning when you say that you can adjust the settings for your cohorts, as a host, are you talking about what you do in the meeting after you've opened it? Or are you talking about going into ESDG's account on the internet and actually changing settings there?
Both, but yes, you can go in before the meeting starts and have everybody in a waiting room, or those kinds of features that I'm sure you're going to talk about. You can activate ahead of time if they're not already activated.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. And let's see, we'll remute Clara. There's 2 hands up, and there was a question asked privately a little bit before about breakout groups on the free platform or only on Pro. You can do breakout groups on the free platform. That was not available in the beginning of Zoom. It is available now. And again, you're limited to 40 minutes, you know, so that restriction will kick you out then. But you do have the option for breakout groups. And hands up. Let's go to Zoe and then Lisa.
Hi, my question was actually from earlier on. You said that you're logged in on 2 computers. Are you logged in on 2 different accounts, or is it enough to send yourself an invite?
Excellent question. Yes, it's 2 different accounts. And the reason being, so this main computer that I'm logged in on has a pro account. So I have all of my pro features on this account. On my extra computer, the one that I have named Robin number 2, I've logged in on a free account because the time limitation doesn't matter when you're a participant. So I can show up on my free account to any meeting that I'm joining for any length of time, up to 24 hours. But it won't kick me out after 40 minutes. That second account, one of the reasons that I set it up that way is on my free account, I will do a local recording. So it records to my local computer. On my main account, I usually do a cloud recording so that I actually have backup for my recordings. I have had it lose a cloud recording once in the last 6 years. And sometimes local recordings get lost too. So if it's really important that, you know, if you've advertised recordings for a class that you're doing or a workshop that you're doing, it's really important to make sure that you have them. So that's one way to ensure it. The other handy feature is using that second computer, I can record a breakout room. So if I have people doing activities in breakout rooms, I can send my second computer into a breakout room as if it were a participant to record that breakout room. And of course I get consent and I let people know what's, you know, what's going to be used, what it's going to be used for. But that's really handy, you know, if you have a 2-hour presentation or a 2-hour workshop and 45 minutes of your 2-hour workshop are in different breakout rooms, and maybe somebody missed your workshop, so they're relying on the recording, they will have missed 45 minutes of your workshop if they don't get to see the breakout recording. So it's a handy, it's really supportive for learning and growth, and, you know, helps people feel like they're involved. If for some reason I'm not able to be involved, but I can watch somebody else do that breakout activity, you know, it supports my feeling like I'm connected with the class. Does that answer it? Yep. And am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is it Zoe? Okay, great. Thanks, Zoe. And Lisa.
My question, okay. My question is, do we have to use the ESD accounts for our mentor meetings, or can I just use my impact account?
I will let someone from ESDG answer that question. So Clara or Bayan or Beth, somebody want to jump in?
I will jump in on that one. You should be using the ESD global account that we have set up for the mentorship program.
Okay.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. We have about 25 minutes left here. I'd like to know, oh, let's do security real quick, and then I'll find out what's most important for you all to, so you can even actually start thinking now. What's the one question you want to walk away from today having the answer to? You can go ahead and put it in the chat, and I will run through security stuff, and then we'll come back and see if we can catch as many of those really important questions to walk away today with, and know we're gonna collect everything else and get it on part 2. All right, so security, a little bit of history with Zoom. In December, well, I'll give you a little bit more history. 6 years ago, the company that I work for, NVC Academy, NVC stands for Nonviolent Communication, asked me to explore Zoom as a video conferencing option for our organization. Prior to that, we offered online classes, but they were all done with Maestro telephone conferencing, which, you know, lacked this visual piece, and so it wasn't quite as connecting. So I did some exploration on that, and we moved into using Zoom, and it has been amazing for our organization. It's really shifted things, changed things. It's been great. So I've used Zoom in an organizational setting, offering workshops and courses for, you know, probably the last 6 years. I've watched Zoom be very responsive over that 6-year period of time with questions and requests for improvements or changes. They've really been very responsive, and it's great. So you say, hey, breakout rooms, we need this. And, you know, a month later, you've got it. It's phenomenal. And we're not that big an organization. So I'm guessing other people have had the same requests, and, you know, they're willing to pay attention to it. So December of this year, Zoom had about 20 million daily users. In March of this year, they had 300 million daily users. So the experience, the global crisis has really impacted the number of people who are accessing Zoom and using it to stay connected in the world. The biggest influx of accounts has been free accounts. That makes sense, right? And single user pro accounts. Zoom was not created to support that population. It does support it, but that wasn't the purpose. Zoom was created to support enterprise, big organization, small business, and then, you know, the individuals that stepped in, yeah, that's cool. But most of their support features, most of their support topics on their website are really geared towards bigger businesses. And their security features were geared towards bigger businesses. And so when all of these people showed up and got free accounts or single user pro accounts, there wasn't a lot of training for them. And in addition to, you know, new people using this, they were using it in a new way. They were offering lots of free courses online. They were putting their links out there for anybody to show up anytime. And this is not the way that it's been used in the past. And so that kind of took Zoom a little bit by surprise. And we've probably all experienced or heard of someone who's experienced having unwanted people show up in your meeting and be disruptive in a variety of ways. So this was even happening in the educational accounts with children. So Zoom very quickly responded to this and created some security changes. Some of those, the most recent round of changes was that on free accounts and single user pro accounts, all meetings now have a mandatory password feature, and you cannot change that. It's just there. Any meeting that you already had created does not have the password added to it, but anything new from that day forward would have a password on it. They also made the waiting room a default setting. So unless you go change it, but you can change it, unless you go change it, people will go through a waiting room process. And the waiting room is simply they show up, they will be alone in a waiting room, and it'll say, please wait for the host to welcome you to the meeting. And then the host will look at your name and go, okay, cool. You know, I know Robin, she can come. Or, does anybody know Robin? I've never seen that name before. And so it is helpful if you're really careful on your end to make sure that your actual name is entered rather than, you know, some designation for your device. You know, it might come up as iPhone 23 or Galaxy 17, you know, so trying to ensure that your name is coming up is helpful. But you can change that setting if you don't like to have waiting rooms. So for the courses that I offer through MVC Academy, we do not have waiting rooms. We don't actually know all of the people who are going to show up for our courses. So it really wouldn't be a benefit to us to do it that way. And most of our courses are paid courses. People aren't very likely to go pay, you know, a significant amount of money to show up and be disruptive. So at least that's been our experience so far. That could change, and if it does, you know, we'll adjust in that time frame. So that's waiting room and passwords. The very newest update that Zoom put out last night adds, let me show you this, adds a security badge on your bottom menu. I'm pointing at it right now. Okay. The advantage to this is it puts all of your security controls in one spot, rather than prior to this update, they were located in different places. Like you could only remove somebody from a meeting by finding them in the list, highlighting their name, clicking on more, and then finding remove. You can still do it that way. Okay. But it could require more steps. Like you have to open the participant box, you have to find the person, you know, all of those things. With this security badge, you can go right over to remove participant. And this is brand new, so I have not played with all of these things. So I'm not going to try to remove somebody just in case. We don't want to actually remove anyone. You can lock your meeting here. Once you've locked your meeting, no new people can enter it. They will get a message that says the host has locked this meeting. You can turn the waiting room on and off here. You can allow participants to do things that I normally don't have set in my meetings. Like I don't usually allow participants to share a screen or annotate on shared content. And yes, usually I don't allow that. But there are times when it would be helpful. So one activity that can support a self-defense workshop is to open up a whiteboard and have everybody write things on it. So, you know, what are the activity where we talk about what are the things that you hear in the world about self-defense as a woman? You can open up that whiteboard and we can all go in there and type those things on the board, and we can add colors and pictures and, you know, be very creative. And at the end of, you know, 5 minutes or whatever time, you've got this beautiful piece of artwork that everybody has written on. You know, I wouldn't do that in a meeting where I didn't actually know people or trust people, but in a workshop setting, a self-defense workshop setting, I would do that, and it would feel really connecting. It would feel like we were almost together as we're doing this piece of art together. So that's the new security setup. Next to share screen, there are some options too. One participant can share at a time. This is helpful so that people aren't accidentally sharing over top of each other. It's kind of like the mute feature. Or you can have multiple participants share at a time. And that's if you wanted to have several different whiteboards up and have each person, you know, doing their own thing. I've never actually done that, so I'm not even sure what it would look like. Maybe we'll try it next week. We'll see if it could be fun for any of our self-defense classes. Other options right here, you can see it's grayed out that only the host can share and only the host can start sharing when someone else is sharing. That's because my primary settings in my account are set that way. And I'll say, I'm noticing here that it would let participants share screen. So again, this is a new update and it may be a glitch. I don't know how that's going to work. And I will explore that and check it out. So maybe next week I'll have more information for you on it. See, I can turn it on and off, but it's kind of strange that I can say you can share. In fact, let's see. Hey, Clara, can you try to share your screen and see if it lets you do it? You don't have to actually go share anything particular. Just try to actually share your screen. Were you able to share, Clara?
No, it says cannot share screen while the other participant is sharing.
Okay. Okay, so even though that is check marked, it's not letting you do it. So this, I think, is kind of just part of this new update being a little bit glitchy, and that they will get that figured out. Thank you, Clara, and I'm sorry I'm asking you things because I know you so, because yeah, and I didn't even get your permission for that, so I regret just calling on you and not checking in with you ahead of time. All right. Okay, so that's security features. I do want to show you really quickly, 12:45. I want to go to my my settings on the Zoom.us so that you can see some of that. Let's go to new share. I'm going to go to my desktop. Okay, and let me get out of this. And I'm doing exactly what I told you all not to do. I'm going to just jump around until I get here. Okay, so this is my Zoom account, my profile, my different meetings, my settings. So when I go into my settings, I have 3 tabs that are important: meeting, recording, and telephone. If you have a free account, you're also going to have all of this, but you won't necessarily have all the exact same options. You won't have the polling option and you won't have the co-host option. I'm not sure about anything else, but I know those 2 are missing. So when you schedule meetings, I always have mine set for the video, my video, and the participants' videos to be off. That way we don't take anybody by surprise. You know, if they've just turned on their computer and they're not dressed in the way they'd like to be dressed to be on video. You can say what kind of audio you'd like to have. Telephone, I always choose telephone and computer. That way people can call in. Like if they're running late to a meeting, they can call in on the way here and be on phone and then join their computer. Join before host. I encourage you not to turn that on, because then, especially if it's a free meeting or something anyone has access to get into, I guess it doesn't matter as much now that we have waiting rooms. If you have the waiting room enabled, this won't matter, but If you don't have waiting room enabled, please don't have join before host. Although there are times, like if I have an open meeting line that I only use with people that I know, you know, probably a handful of people, and that meeting line, I leave it open so whoever gets there first can go ahead and get started. But again, this is a trust feature, and you can set that for each individual meeting. Personal meeting IDs, I've never used them, and what I hear with regard to security is they are not as secure as we'd like them to be, because they are the same link and they are the same password and they just exist. They don't have waiting rooms, to my knowledge. I could be wrong there. Again, I don't use these personally, but explore this. Yeah, you don't have as much control over personal meeting IDs. So I don't use those. Some of this is a little more advanced. Here's the require a password. When scheduling new meetings, I'm not, you weren't supposed to be able to turn that off, but apparently you can now. So that must have been part of the new update, is that you can choose about passwords. And I do suggest that you have passwords. Chats, you can have chat to everyone or private chats. You might want to limit those depending on what kind of meeting you're offering. Auto saving chats. I'll come back to that when there were some security questions about chats. So I'll come back to that when I turn off the screen share. File transfers, I keep them on so that I can share documents. Yesterday we discovered that even though this was on, we could no longer do direct file transfers. They had to be links. Again, this is something that Zoom is playing around with because of security. If you have file transfers and people come in and they have a Word document with, you know, an inappropriate image on it and they share it to your group, yeah, that wouldn't be very fun. And you can't set it so that only the host can file transfer. That's a limitation. Co-host, again, it's nice to have a co-host to help support you. Polling is fun. We're going to do that next week. And here's the setting that I'm using so that you can see my Zoom windows. This you would normally want to have off. Screen sharing, I have set so only the host can do it. And I've disabled the desktop screen share so that you don't accidentally go to my desktop. Annotation, allow participants to use annotation tools. I have that one turned on right now because I used it a couple days ago for the whiteboard. I turn that off in some meetings. And again, here's the whiteboard. Okay, so those are the important meeting settings. There are a lot more settings, but those are the important ones. Recordings, you can set what you record. You can look through that. If you have questions, you're welcome to ask me if you look through it for next week. And telephone, I put the international numbers on my invitation email because I have a lot of people from around the world who come. And this is an important one too. We don't want everybody's full phone number showing up in the participant list. Again, that's a security issue. So make sure you're masking the number so it only shows up part of it. So those are the main settings. We're at 12:51. There's 9 minutes left. Any questions on the main settings? Okay, and while I'm waiting for any hands to come up, okay, I'm looking through. Okay, Rachel, yes, this was the piece that I was tagging to come back to. Hang on, I have an antsy teenager. All right, who's texting me? So there was a comment somebody put on Twitter that their private chats were available for people to see. That can happen by accident. When you save a chat, so if a participant, if you look at the bottom right-hand side of the chat, there's 3 dots across it. If you click on that, it will give you an option to save chat. So that's your personal chat that you can save, and it will save all of your private chats. But it saves it to your computer. It's not getting posted anywhere. It's not on Zoom's account. You know, other people can't access it unless you show it to them. As a host, I can save my chat, same way that you can. And when I save my chat, it will have all of my private chats as well. So anything anybody's private chatted to me will be included in that. I could share that, but I wouldn't. But we do like to share the chat so that people can reference the comments that were made, or like people will put links in there to different events or documents. So you have to share the chat a different way. As a host, you don't want to share this one that you save on your computer. You want to share the one that comes from your account. And I'll take you real quick to a screen share again. And back to my account. Okay. In the recordings tab, here's a recording. And in that recording, I have a chat file. This chat file only saves the public chat. So I can download that chat file and share that if I'm needing to give the chat file to anyone. Okay. Any other questions related to security and settings? And then, can a participant invite anyone to the meeting? So Dinah, it depends on how you have your account set up. You can try it right now. You can go to that invite option. It should be, let's see, where did they move it to? It used to be right down here. Oh, it's for me. Let's see, actually it looks, yeah. On a participant screen, you probably still see invite, a little person symbol with a plus symbol next to it on your bottom menu. And click that and copy the URL. So you could copy the URL and send it to someone. They most likely would not be able to get in because they wouldn't have registered and they wouldn't have the password. I'm gonna confirm that. So I just sent it to myself and here it is. So yeah, so I did. I just sent myself the link and it will ask me to register. And that's because of ESDG's settings for this meeting. So if you don't have registration set up on your meeting, then it would work differently. One of the most important tools that I've used to learn is having 2 computers and 2 accounts and playing with it. For me, visual and doing something, and probably for most of us ESD people, the actual act of doing something is what helps us, you know, integrate it into our cells and our bones and our muscles. The same thing for our brain cells. You know, actually doing these things is what's going to help you integrate it. So if you have some time to play around with 2 computers or a phone and a computer or an iPad and a computer and try out all of these settings, it will help you see what's happening. And again, Zoom changes a lot. So pretty much, yeah, whatever you learn, it's probably going to change at least a little bit, and you're going to get taken by surprise. But having this general overview of how things are supposed to work is helpful. And practice, practice, practice. And Zoe, you didn't have to have a password today because this was a registered meeting. And when you register, you're giving your name and email address, and it doesn't require a password. Other meetings, if I sent you a link to a meeting that I scheduled without registration, then it would have a password and you'd have to type that in. All right, gotta run. I'm just looking back through a written resource that covers a lot of what you've discussed here. I'm taking notes, but I'd like a general manual if it's available. Zoom has a lot of information on their website. There are a few links I will pull together and bring them for part 2. Links like, you know, best practices for hosting a meeting. There are a few links that are supportive through Zoom that I'll send out to you. Zoe, we're going to do whiteboard next time. So part 2 is actually not next week. I think it is the week after. And do you recommend an optimum number of participants for an ESD type program? We generally conduct mass trainings, 100+ students in the real world. Will you suggest to try such training through Zoom? That's an interesting question. I hosted my very largest meeting this week. It had 200 people in attendance, and we did breakout rooms in that meeting, and I had 50 breakout rooms to manage. That was hard. I'm telling you, I was sweating. I never moved. I was just sitting here in front of the computer, but that was hard. I had one person in a breakout room alone who then came and told me, well, never imagined I would experience virtual social distancing. Yep, it was interesting. It was kind of, yeah. I think that I would work up to a group of that size, and that I would have a lot of assistants helping. Lots of co-hosts and people who could go into breakout rooms and support people with questions, especially with technology, but even with, you know, the specific activities. I would have lots and lots of help to do that. And I'd start small and work my way up, you know, get a use for it, figure it out. Breakout groups, we will do that next week. Best protect against trolls. Do not post links on Facebook or social media. If you'd like to, you know, post something that's easy for people to get to, I would suggest a registration link, just like what we had to do here, where you click the register now and you have to enter your name and your email address. It's one extra step. It's slightly discouraging. It may, you know, weed out some people. And yes, people will still show up that are going to be disruptive, or they might. I don't know how WebEx compares, and getting rid of a troll, that's, and what is the protocol when you freeze? I'm curious if you mean freeze by if I freeze and I don't know what to say next, or if my screen freezes. That would be two different questions. So, and I think we're actually out of time. So I'm going to save this chat, and I will put together answers to as much of this as I can. Our plan for next week, things that we're going to cover, are recordings as a tool, breakout rooms, whiteboard, chat, and polls. And I will actually come with a couple of interactive quick exercises to show you some things that you can do as an ESD trainer to utilize polls, chats, ways to get people involved. Okay, and they'll be super quick, but I think they'll be fun, and we'll do a little bit more, you know, active and interactive next week. So keep putting questions in the chat if you have more questions, and thank you for all the thank yous. I appreciate that. And it was if the screen freezes. Yes, thank you for clarifying that, and I will definitely give you a run through on what happens there. All right.
All right, thank you so much, Robin. Really appreciate it. And everyone, as we mentioned, the next webinar will be on the 23rd. And we will be sending a reminder email as well and putting it on our closed group. So we will see you then. Thank you.
Thank you all. Let's unmute and everybody can say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Now you get to hear what it sounds like when more than one person talks at a time.